In this lesson, we're going to be continuing to take a look at how we calculate logarithm values. But today we're actually going to be digging into how to do it with a calculator. But before we start taking a look at how to do it with a calculator, I just want to remind you about how you do these two problems. Hopefully you can just look at these and know by now. You've had lots of practice with them. But I want to bring them back because I want us to make sure that we remember as we're doing the later calculations what that's really telling us. So remember that basically this first problem, log base 2 of 32, is saying 2 to the power of what equals 32. For that reason, the answer is 5. And then we do the same thing for the other one. This log base 5 of 1 really means 5 to the power of what equals 1. Anything to the power of 0 equals 1. And so that one is going to be 0. So just remember what these logarithms really mean, where they're saying what's the exponent. All right, now these are the values that we're actually going to be calculating today. So you're going to need your calculator handy in order to be able to do these. So for the first one, we just have log 30. Now, as we saw in our most recent lesson on logarithms, we know that that's the common logarithm. It's defaulting to log base 10 of 30 whenever we don't see that written in. But you can go ahead and just use the log button on your calculator to find that value. You should be getting an answer of about 1.48 for that. So make sure, of course, you're able to get that and that you got that much on your calculator and that everything's working right so you're comfortable with the tool at hand. And then we hit number 2, where we have log base 5 of 20. And most calculators do not have a nice button that lets you put any base into it. And so instead we have to find some other way to be able to calculate it using the buttons on your calculator that it does have. And since everybody's calculator has that basic log button that we just used in number 1, there's actually a formula that can be used to calculate a value where the base is not 10. That formula is called the change of base formula. This should go into your notes right now. So go ahead and write it down and then resume the video. All right, now you'll notice in this formula that it's log base b. You notice that that base ends up being on the bottom. And then the y, that's on the top, right? But notice that in this formula over here, in that fraction, there are no bases shown. That means that each of those two logarithms are just your common logarithm. They're both just log base 10. Now, technically, this actually works if you could find log base 3 for both of them. You could actually use log base 3 for both. It doesn't matter. The trick is just that the base of your logarithm has to be exactly the same on both the top and the bottom for this change of base formula to work. So, since you have that in your notes, let's actually go see how it would apply to this problem. So again, we have log base 5 of 20. Well, as we just saw with our change of base formula, we know that we will end up having a log on top and a log on bottom. It's just a matter of which number goes on top and which number goes on bottom. The way that I always remember it, that I find nice and useful, is that I always remember that the base goes on the bottom. The alliteration there helps me to remember that whatever the base is, that's going to be my bottom number. However, some people don't remember it that way. Others remember it as the fact that the 5 here, our base, is written smaller and lower. And because it's actually written lower, it's also written lower in the fraction. And so either way to be able to remember how to write it there is fine. But once you know that the 5 goes on the bottom, well, then process of elimination tells you that the 20 must go on top. So we know that we're going to have to calculate this value by doing log of 20 divided by log of 5. Now it's a matter of how do you type that in your calculator and have it all work out right. And that really does depend on what type of calculator you're using. On a typical scientific calculator, that is one where it does not display what you type in on your screen as you type it in. So like if you press the log button on your calculator, and it takes the logarithm of whatever number is currently showing on your calculator, you're probably using a scientific calculator. And so if that is the case, then these are the keystrokes you would want to follow. So if you're on that type of calculator, notice you enter the 20 first and then press log. When you do that, That 20 log tells you what the logarithm of 20 is. So as soon as you press that log button, it's showing and displaying what log of 20 is. And then you would say divide it by the log of 5. Now, when you press 5 and then press that log button over there, what it's displaying on your calculator screen at that moment is what the log of 5 equals. Well, that's not our answer of doing the division. And so on that type of calculator, you then actually have to press the equals button in order for it to do the division. Now on the flip side, if you're using a graphing calculator, when you type in log, it actually displays log in your calculator, and then it starts a parenthesis and it asks you what you want to type in next. And so if you're using that type of calculator, then this is your set of keystrokes that you're going to want to follow. So you would type in log, and then you'd enter 20. But whenever you type in log and press that log button, it actually displays on your screen log and then it starts parentheses. So when you type in your 20, before you divide, notice you have to end that parenthesis. So that's why you're having to end the parentheses before you press the division symbol on a graphing type of calculator. And then you say divide by log 5, end that parenthesis as well. And again, you will have to press the enter or the equals button in order to be able to figure out what that actually gives you. Practice doing that on your calculator and make sure that you can get this as your correct answer of 1.86. So make sure you can do this series of keystrokes and get that number out before worrying about doing the rest of them. Now, once you do have that number, go ahead, pause the video, and calculate the remaining 3 values. And then here in a few moments, on the video at least, I'm going to go ahead and display what each of those answers are so you can make sure you got those right. And these are those answers for the rest of this. So you'll notice how I calculated each one of them. We're always putting the base on the bottom of the fraction when we do this calculation. And so go ahead and check and make sure you got each of those right. Once you're able to get each of these right, you should be good to go ahead and just do any other calculations like this that you see come up along the way.